Alright guys, Murph's here. And today we're going to be talking about the difference between 223 and 5.56. And we're going to talk specifically about chambers. I want to talk about this stuff because right now we have a lot of first-time gun buyers out there running around in gun shops and stuff like that. And they're buying up all kinds of guns, including AR-15s and other 223 caliber rifles. And when a lot of them are out there buying this stuff without a good understanding of what it is that they're buying, they're potentially putting themselves in a dangerous condition when it comes to not respecting the difference between these two cartridges. And it seems like every time we have one of these bum rushes on purchasing guns, we wind up seeing a lot of time spent on this subject specifically, especially the 5.56 versus 223, to make sure that we don't have guns blowing up on ranges. So that being the case, let's talk about these two individually first. So 223 came out in 1957. Some minor changes made to 222. Whole idea was that you would have this hypervelocity bullet and a new intermediate cartridge for a brand new family of firearms in the U.S. military, which were to become the M16 and the AR-15 families, right? So you're talking about a cartridge that's moving between like 2,900 and 3,000, possibly up to like 3,200 feet per second. And 22 caliber bullet, so it's a very small bullet moving at extremely high rate of speed. And that was new. This is a very new idea at this time. The closest anyone had gotten to intermediate cartridges would be like the 6.5 millimeters that you would see in like World War I into World War II. At this time, everyone wanted, especially the United States, we wanted full power 30 caliber rifle cartridges. We were a big fan of the 30-06 and the 308. Now, what the 223 brought to the table was that you could carry more bullets that still could wound or kill out to 500 yards. So you could carry more of this lighter ammunition. It was more controllable, less recoil, all this kind of stuff. Just to let you guys know, there is a storm going on, so hopefully that doesn't impact our audio too much. Now, what is 5.56? Well, 5.56 by 4.5 is the metric conversion of 223 caliber. That's all it's saying. It's a 5.56 millimeter diameter, or 223, and a 45 millimeter long casing. And you get 5.56, you know, that becomes a thing when we get into NATO standardization and all that kind of stuff. Now, are there any differences truly between 5.56 and 223? And the answer is yes. They are minute differences. You're talking about a slightly longer throat on the 5.56, and there's a couple of minor internal capacity type differences between a 5.56 and a 223. So, with that being the case, is that important? And the answer is yes. Now, like I said, we're talking about incremental changes. I believe it's, if I remember correctly, the 5.56 throat is 0.125 inches longer. Sounds pretty negligible, right? But now take this into account. A 223's peak pressure is 55,000 psi. A 5.56 peak pressure is 58,000 psi. That's what that incremental change gets you, 3,000 psi more. Now, it doesn't seem like a whole lot. Once again, 3,000 psi, well, does that really matter? Well, consider that this 3,000 psi increase is right next to your head when it happens. Hopefully now I have everyone's attention when it comes to this subject. Now, that being the case, you do have different chamber cuts, different shapes, different places in the chamber where the rifling starts and all that kind of stuff. In a 223 chamber versus a 5.56 chamber, there is less distance before the rifling starts in the chamber. So you have chamber to barrel, it's a shorter jump. Now, from a 223 standpoint, that's really good because there's less distance that the bullet has to cover. You don't get what a lot of your reloaders and precision shooters call bullet jump. So in theory, the bullet stays perfectly centered, all that kind of stuff. The problem is with that smaller distance is that when you take, say, a 77 grain 5.56 round, which that's a pretty long bullet. Most of your your 5.56 223 bullets are in the 55 grain range, and they'll go as low as 35 to 40 grains in a 223, and especially when you get solidly into the 5.56 loading, you can get all the way up to 85 grains, though 77's the most common. Well, when you take a 77 grain 5.56, that's a lot of bullet. Like, that is a longer bullet. And you put that into a 223 chamber, you actually get bullet engagement in the lands and grooves of the rifling as soon as you bring that bolt forward. As soon as the bullet's in the chamber, the round is in the chamber, that bullet has engaged the rifling. Well, that's a problem if you should decide, you've changed your mind, you actually don't want to shoot that round, so you go to unload it. You could potentially pull that projectile out of the casing, dump powder all over the place, and still have an obstruction in the bore. That's kind of a worst case scenario, right? So what's really the issue here? Because I'm not making a whole video about the possibility that you could be pulling bullets out of casings, right? Bore obstructions. You're going to know that there's a bore obstruction right off the bat, and you're going to have to get a cleaning rod to get that out. No, what's concerning is with that slight difference. You take a 5.56 with that 0.125 inch longer throat, and you put that into the smaller 223 chamber. That 3,000 PSI increase becomes a 10,000 PSI increase because compression. Hey, Brad. Pepper came up to say hi. You want to say hi? Okay, I'm working. Give me a second. Brad. So, you now have a 10,000 PSI increase in pressure. And it's right by your head. Oh, by the way, in case we forgot that little fact. So now you're really running the risk of that chamber coming from together, grenading right by your face. Now, there are a lot of people who tell you that they make a habit of running 5.56 out of a 223 chamber, and it's never been an issue for them. And to that, I say, well, you've been lucky. But constantly doing it over and over again is only going to change that dynamic against you. The odds are eventually going to run out, and at some point that rifle is going to grenade. It is not built to withstand that. Really nothing is necessarily built to withstand a 10,000 PSI increase in pressure. And that's also kind of talking about worst case, so that's putting one of the the big beefy bullets in there, the 77 or 85 grainers, into a 223 chamber. But regardless, you're still getting a pressure spike no matter what, because that throat is longer. You're getting more engagement, more compression right off the bat. The best case scenario is that you're going to start having so much pressure in the chamber that primers are going to start spitting out of the back end of the cartridge and are going to jam up the internal works of your rifle. Now, most chambers are marked what they're rated for, be it 223 or 5.56. Now, if you look at, say, Ruger Mini 14s, an older Ruger Mini 14 will not be marked 5.56, but I do know that if you contact Ruger, a lot of times they will tell you that it is a 5.56 rated chamber. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. The only Mini 14 I have is rated for 5.56. It's marked on the chamber. Now, most AR-15s are rated 5.56, but for a little while, in the past couple of years, there was a run of extreme budget rifles, we're talking at the $400 price point, that were not 5.56 rated. And a lot of people bought them up because all they saw was $400 AR-15 and they jumped on it, not realizing that it was not a full mil-spec AR-15 capable of handling 5.56 ammunition. Now, there is another chamber option called the 223 Wilde. And what the 223 Wilde does is it strikes a really good balance between a 223 and a 5.56 chamber to where you still get appropriate seating depth for your bullets, I guess you could say, or bullet engagement, and you don't have a nasty overpressure type situation. I've never known anybody to really get too bent out of shape over 223 Wilde. I myself do not pursue 223 Wilde chambers. I do not have any rifles with a 223 Wilde chamber. I wouldn't turn one down either. I just wouldn't necessarily consider it to be like a top selling point for me, like barrel material or coating or profile would be for me. So that's pretty much what I wanted to touch on, guys, was make sure that we understood the difference between 223 and 5.56 so that we don't have rifles grenading on the range. So, you guys have a good day.